That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with another episode of J1Q. Just one question. That podcast that's dedicated to the education, inspiration, and guidance for resources to all minority voices and underrepresented people. Today, I'm going to be talking to a guest that I'm absolutely excited about. That's going to be bringing one of my favorite subjects I speak about, education, and why it's so important, some different ways to learn leaderships and help out some parents to find different ways to find the best education for their kids and themselves. So I'm extremely excited about that, and let's just get into it without any further ado. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big warm welcome for our guest coming to the screen, to the mic, Mr. Dakota Irby. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing today, sir? How are you doing today?
Lion, I'm doing really, really good. Can't complain. Everything is good. Thank you.
Love it, man. This is going to be so great because, ladies and gentlemen, so just to kind of let I love speaking with my guests and my podcast. I'm very transparent. We were talking just a little bit before we got started, and we found out we got some things in common. So this is going to make it extremely exciting. But before we do that, I always love for my guests to tell a little bit about themselves because anyone can read words on the screen. They're going to be able to read your bio. They're going to read the show notes. But take just a few moments, if you don't mind, and let the listeners know who you are so they can see why you're so passionate about the subject we're about to speak about.
Yeah. Thank you first again for the opportunity to join onto your podcast. Again, my name is Dakota Irby. I'm a creator. I'm an author of several books, including Stuck Improving, Racial Equity in School Leadership, Dignity Affirming Education, as well as a children's book, Magical Black Tears, a Protest Story, which I hope we'll have the chance to talk a little bit more about today. By day, I'm an associate professor at University of Illinois of Chicago. I'm also a parent of two children. I'm a partner, and I'm also a self-taught musician and a guitarist. So that's a little bit about me. I'm super passionate about all things about Black excellence and contributing to Black folks and Black communities well-being, financially, educationally, so on and so forth. And so everything that I do, whether it's working in my neighborhood garden, spearheading an effort to bring baseball and softball for children to our community, or writing a book, or lecturing. I all do it really in the interest of supporting and developing the resources that will help Black people in the United States have wonderful, fulfilling lives.
Absolutely love that. And this is so exciting hearing those little small things because, like the gardening and the songwriting, and I love that because sometimes when we mention things that we do, it gives a connotation to someone else listening, like, and they'll say, and this is something I absolutely just dislike so much. They go, "Oh, that's not really a black thing," and I'll go, "Well,
Mm,
what is a black thing?" Like I love chess. I play chess all the time. My son, he's 8. He's in the chess club and they go, "Oh, that's not really a black thing." Well, what is a black thing? Like, who
mhm.
decides what that is? And so, the gardening when you're speaking of, that's something that. What do you mean? That's important. What if we could teach our kids or our family members or our community how to do that to self-sustain for something? Man, this is so exciting. All right, so
Yeah.
we're going to jump back into that. And yes, you're right. We're going to get into that book, but let me follow my notes so I don't get too lost. Let's get into education first because that is to me the crux of where it starts, right? Uh, Education can be different for so many people. Some people learn different. Even to this day, for an example, I still feel because my son has ADHD. And everyone
Mhm.
knows I talk about that on our podcast. And he actually has a podcast called ADHD is My Superpower. So my
Oh
wife
wow.
and I decided to empower him with that instead of making him feel, whatever. So I believe to this day that I still have a little touch of ADHD myself. I've never been diagnosed, but I say that because coming up in school, um, I learned so much differently. And sometimes I don't think the school system is set to teach or help young students learn. It's kind of set more so to just teach them the ABCD system instead of teaching them to be creative. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on our system starting for our young kings and queens out there? And what are some ways that you feel can adjust?
Yeah. I happen to agree with you. I'm an educator, and one of the reasons that I went into education was because I became very disoriented with how the schools, specifically in Philadelphia, weren't serving students well. So, just to give you a little bit of background, when I first went to undergrad, I went to College of Charleston, which is where one of our connections is. Is that I lived in Charleston. I majored in economics. I thought I was going to go into like community development, and I still dibble and dabble in that a little bit. But when I was in Philadelphia, I started working with high school students in a program called Young Scholars Program, and that program, recruited middle school students when they were in eighth grade, and then followed them from ninth to 12th grade, and did all of these things to help them prepare for admission into college. And the goal would be that they would, matriculate and graduate. And despite all of the efforts, many of the families and the students doing all the things that we asked them to do, the SAT prep, filling out the FAFSA forms for financial aid, submitting applications, putting in scholarship information. They did everything that people asked them to do. And for Black students and Latino students who I work with in Philadelphia, for a lot of them, the process still didn't work out for them. And so that's what led me to decide to pursue a PhD in urban education. And yeah, the school system, the way that it's set up, is designed for students and families who are very much kind of in the middle, who kind of you know basically have the resources, particular sets of knowledge that allow them to do well in this particular institution. And for students and for families that don't have the access or haven't had the kinds of successes in those institutions that allow them to navigate it and to succeed within it, it doesn't necessarily always work in their best interests. And so, as you mentioned, students that might have different learning needs, um, it just might not work for whether those are, students who are, identified as, gifted, or whether it's students who might have any kind of, cognitive or physical um, differences that aren't typical. The school might not necessarily work for them. I know for me, I have two children, and my son's schooling experiences are very different than my daughter's. He just has a different way of going about things, and so we have to do a lot of work to make the school system that he's in actually work for him. And this is the experience for countless families with children throughout the country. And it gets exacerbated because we know that schools are places that weren't designed and are not designed to support the learning needs of Black and Brown kids in particular. So schools don't work well for all students in general, but then once you add on the factor of racism and how schools are places where racism continues to thrive, it there's an additional layer of difficulty that black and brown families face when they send their children to the schools.
Yeah, it is something that as a kid, we don't know. We don't see that. Then when you become an adult and you start having to live that life with your kids, you start to notice it and learn it. And part of that was when, I was coming up through life and I started saying, okay, well, I want my son to be in a better environment in schooling. So my wife and I, we would move to an affluential community and something. And we, wait a second, they have what kind of lab? They have what kind of books and research? Their books aren't falling apart. And so, and then I saw, well, that comes from the taxes, from the homes. And there's so much more that's not divvied up to give people the same opportunity. And it's so disheartening and hurtful because there are so many young kids out there. If we were to nourish their minds and foster that kind of positive feedback, they could be the next Einstein. Or I like small example, and then I'll get into the next part of that. When I was in school, I was very much an auditory learner. I
Hmm.
can listen. I wouldn't be paying attention. my teacher would call me, Lauren, what are you doing? And what did I just say? And I could recite it back. And but for me, that was it was functional for me. I would be playing around, but now it seems like kids have so much distraction
Yeah.
phones and everything else in the world of they want to be so popular. They're fighting such an uphill battle from so many different angles. What are
Hmm.
any tools or techniques that you may think that teachers or parents or anyone else can help kind of funnel, I guess, their their thought process to kind of help them out? Is there anything that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, you hit one of the key things. The ability to be able to concentrate is huge. Um, the screen time is not ideal. And so one some of the basic things are both in the school setting and out of school settings, trying to limit screen time, giving children and young people the opportunity to use their time to be creative and to do other things, whether that's pretend play, or whether it's read, whether it's build things with like Legos or blocks, all of those things, or and go outside and play and ride bikes and shoot basketball and all those different sorts of things. Those are all things that are really, really important and really developmentally appropriate for students and for children. They need to have opportunities to do those sorts of things. Um, there's a huge reliance. I understand for a number of reasons that people have on technology and screens, but one of the main things that I think that people can do is try to limit screen time. Now, one of the things that limiting screen time does is it forces us to get creative about what we're going to do with that additional time. I tell you one thing that was really, really cool, that has allowed me to have a lot more quality time and learning opportunities with my children is when back when Colin Kaepernick, called for, protesting the NFL. I stopped watching football on Sundays, and I didn't realize how much time that gave me. It gave me a ton of time, and most people are still in the house on Sundays, and so we just started to have the opportunity to do all kind of things on Sundays. If you want to go to a museum, go to a museum on Sunday. If you want to get outside, if you want to do something and there's not lines, but beyond that, even staying at home and being in the house, it just allowed me to begin to do things like play with Legos with them and just build things, draw, color, write stories, all of those different sorts of things that we could do when we don't have the screen as the thing that's really capturing and captivating our attention. So I think that's one thing, is just thinking about what we can do beyond being on screens. Um, and then I think the second thing is that, some similar to what you talked about, really pouring into our children um, affirmations about the things that interest them and about the uniqueness and the kind of things that are their strengths, right? And really framing things that some people might think of as weaknesses or flaws, really framing those things as strengths. So, for example, there was a point in time with my daughter. She wouldn't tell the truth a lot. She would make things up, and some of those things was just like, this is kind of ridiculous. We know it's not true. But what I started telling her, as opposed to saying you're lying or don't lie, and that's not true, I would say that's really creative. You got a really creative mind. Oh, I like how you came up with that story. That was a really creative story, right? And helping her make the distinction between, like, she's making these things up, but the ability to make these things up is like, is really important. And so that's translated into her interest and enthusiasm about improv, right? So she does improv and acting, and she's really into that kind of stuff, whether it's like puppeting, working with puppets, doing improv. And so we've enrolled her in improv classes, and she likes to think on her feet and be creative and make things up. And so, it's important to, when you see something that seems like at a time a kind of negative characteristic or a negative behavior, you can think about ways to flip it into like, wow, this is really, really, really powerful, story that you just told. You should write that down, right? That'll make a really good movie. but it's not true. But it will make a really good movie, and I really appreciate the level of creativity you brought to it.
Man, you just hit the nail on the head. A couple of things there, and I'm absolutely like, and this is one reason why I love having conversations like this, right? Because we get to always learn different things. Like you, instead of saying the lying and so forth, like that's creative. And I tell my listeners all the time, that we are not beholden to our ancestors. And the way I explain that is, for a long time, I used to have childhood trauma, and I still do at some point. I deal with it. I do go to therapy. I always talk about it's okay to not be okay, mental health. My listeners know as a veteran, I speak on it. But my point in saying that is for years, I held frustration and thing against my mom and against my grandparents. But then I started to learn as I went through this transition that they were just teaching me what they were taught. They were
Hmm.
teaching me what they knew, and they said, figured, well, if that's what I know, I need to pass it down next generation, to pass it down. And so
Right.
my point in saying that is that I wanted to change that with my son. I remember I didn't appreciate the way my father or someone did this with me. So, point example, today, matter of fact, this morning when I took him to school, he asked me, Dad, can I wear mismatched shoes? Sure, go for it, kid.
Yeah.
I
Right.
want to
Right.
I want to prep you though. There's probably going to be some kids who say something to you. Just be ready
Right.
for it. I'm
Yep.
cool with that, Dad. Then have fun, right? I don't want to hold him back. Nope, no mismatched shoes because, oh come on, what is it going to hurt? He's
Yeah.
creative. He's at an age where he wants to express in a way he knows how. It ain't hurting no one. It's not. So I love the fact that you said that because now some listeners might go and say, you know what? I was telling my kid that you're lying because that's what my mom said to me, my grandma said to me. Now I might try saying, you know what, that's really creative. And these are the reasons why I love these conversations and kind of showing that way. And that leads me into something that we were going to talk about next is in order to process and take the next step, I believe you have to learn to become that leader, right? In
Hmm.
leadership, leaders just don't say, follow me, but they show here's why, or they sometimes even say, you know what, that's a great idea. I didn't think of it like that. Let's try to
Hmm.
implement, maybe yours and just see. So talk to us about your thoughts on that. What do you mean when you say, hey, let's learn about leadership?
Yeah. So I mean, this is interesting. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and we started really talking about this, especially as relates to working with Black children in particular. The importance of us really being able to cue in and share with them some of the leadership, right? So letting them kind of lead and letting their questions be something that can lead the way for us, right? And so we were talking about how a lot of what you were saying, like wanting to do something different, wanting to take a different approach, and the specific thing we were talking about was the kinds of we was talking about risks, right? And people often associate leaders with people as people who take risks. And what we talked about was how our approaches to parenting Black children feels at times risky, right? That I think that our parents wanted to kind of try to cultivate safety, and they wanted to have like that kind of a more of a sense of safety. And then we talked about our parenting being based a large part around trying to create these opportunities for our children to take risks, which also means that it's risky for us, and we're taking risks too. And so he was talking about his son going to a baseball tournament and playing with boys that were bigger than him, stronger than him, could throw harder than him, and that as a parent he was afraid, right? But he was like, his son didn't have no fear. He jumped right in there. And so I think that part of it is like the leadership piece is about the willingness to be creative, to take risk, and to step into things that are oftentimes unknown and that we might be fearful of actually trying on our own, even if we maybe have seen someone else do it. The idea that comes to mind for me is, as I mentioned, I wrote a children's book called Magical Black Tears. And really, that book came from me trying to face some fears that I had around um, my children asking me questions about racism, racial justice, protest. Why are people in the streets? Why do people do these things? The old school piece of me that came out was, don't worry about that. That's for grown folks, right? Don't worry about it. That's not for you to worry about. But they had questions. And so the part of me, and this is for whether it's school leaders, teachers, parents, the leadership piece that I feel young people benefit from is us taking the risk and us stepping into the uncomfortable space of trying to help them answer and find answers to those questions, even if we don't necessarily have them, right? Um, and so that's what kind of led me to moving into kind of like pursuing this book project. And then, I've had my children like right there with me along the way as I've started to work to develop this museum exhibition. It's a thematically based off of the book. And so I think some of the leadership is really about really paying much closer attention to what children are asking, what young people are asking, and taking some direction in terms of what they want and what they say they need. And I think that that cuts across everything from parenting to teaching to being an effective school leader is understanding what the children want and need and leaning into the uncomfortable spaces of trying to answer their questions. Their questions have a lot of power. The questions that people don't want to answer, it's a lot of healing. It's a lot of possibility. It's a lot of potential in and on the other side of those questions that we are happy to avoid on a regular basis.
Yeah, this is man, like I'm it's resonating with me so much because I'm hearing this, and I love, I forget who had this quote, and I may not be saying it correct, but someone somewhere I saw something that said, "Be the change you want to see in the world," or something like that. And that kind of goes into that statement because I always said, I remember being a kid and asking, my parents about something, and I would get kind of that generic answer: "Hey, it's grown folks' business. It's not your place." And but I'm like, I'm still curious, and so I said, "Well, I want to be that change, so I'm going to start that with my son." So when he asked me questions, I was like, you know what? It might be a little bit more complicated, but I'll tell you something in a way, in a manner that I believe a 9-year-old will be able to understand and share with them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to share everything with you, son, because but I'm still open enough, and he's more receptive, and he's even more like, I want to ask you more questions versus shutting down because I told him none of your business. you know
Yeah,
and so
for
I
sure.
tell my listeners, if you want to affect the next generations, it starts now, because our kids are going to see us do it, and then they're going to push on, and that's also educating them. Education doesn't always come directly from the school system. They teach them ABCs, but we can teach them sometimes what life is. And we're going to jump into kind of a little bit more about your book here. And the reason why I say that is because when you just said, hey, it was kind of written because of that time frame in which you were going through. I remember a time that I felt a big, um how do I want to put this? I don't want to say big things on my shoulders, but I felt something from a young kid. I used to teach magic camp here in Las Vegas. Every
Mm,
summer I would
really
got a
cool.
sponsor, and I would sit down for about a week, and we would teach young kids. And then at the end of the week, they would go and perform for their friends and family, in kind of like a little performance setting. So it also taught them
Hmm.
communication, stage fright, getting rid of all of that.
Right.
And I remember, one parent came to me, and she said her son came, and I even got a testimonial from him. He came in a dress down, button down shirt with some suspenders, pants, and then a bow tie. And she said he wanted to dress like how you do when you perform, because he's never seen like that kind of black representation on the TV screen or something like that. And to him, I was a celebrity, D-list
Right.
celebrity, but I was still a celebrity because he got to meet someone on TV and stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
representation matters, and to see a book that is written and see young faces that look like them. Like I would see videos real quick, and we'll jump into that, about the Ariel. People were posting videos of seeing the Black Mermaid, and their kids seeing the Black Mermaid on TV, and they would turn around
Yeah.
and cry or so. And
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa! So let's talk about your
Yeah.
book here, Magical Black Tears. I'm gonna put the book up on
Mm,
screen for the listeners. Remember, as I always tell you, you can go catch the actual video of this if you want to watch and see some of the things that's on screen over on our YouTube channel. It's at Black Negus, Negus. And let me say this real quick because this is really funny, and I'm gonna jump into the book. So my oldest, 25 years old, he called and he's like, "Mom, did you see his that Instagram page? It's like, you know what that means?" And I'm like, "Whoa, wait a second, is that my what? You don't you know I taught you better than that, right?" So he's like, "Yeah, that's bad." And my mom's like, "No." She's like, my wife's like, "No, no." Ladies and gentlemen, we stem from royalty. That word, it's been taken down through the years, but it's royalty. It's kings.
Right.
It's oh my goodness. All right, so let's talk about your book here. I'm putting it up on screen, so ladies and gentlemen, go take a look at the screen if you get a chance to on our Instagram and our YouTube pages at Black Negus. But go ahead, take this away, Dakota, and let us know why, what this represents, so people who can see it.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the book is called Magical Black Tears. It was illustrated by my colleague Dominique Duval Diop. And it's basically the story of two children who have some events happening in their neighborhood. There's police, there's fire, there's sounds, sirens, and they're curious about what's going on outside. Their parents say, as many Black people's parents have said to them, "Don't worry about it, mind your business, grown folks' business." And but they were still curious, and so the story becomes magical when the daughter Maya is put to sleep at night. Her mother puts her to sleep, and she decides to go out to the street to find out what's going on her own, since the adults will not provide her with answers. And in the course of her and her younger brother Kyle exploring what's happening in the street, they discover the magic of everyday people fighting for racial justice. And so they're up close and they're in the mix of the protest, and end up playing a really important role in shaping the trajectory of the protest that was happening in their neighborhood. So that's the general premise of the book. I wrote it in 2020. I actually had the idea several years earlier in 2016. It came to me by way of a dream uh, that I had, and I jumped up and kind of just jotted down the ideas. And then in 2020, during the Black Lives Matter protest, for to protest George Floyd's murder and Breonna Taylor and so many other people, it was when I felt like I really needed to you know capture the story in the children's book form. And it was cool because it allowed me to have these conversations with my children, and it's just created an entire window of opportunity to talk about police brutality, housing rights, to housing insecurity and housing rights and housing affordability, justice, food justice, and a host of other different sorts of things that I touch on in the book. But it's allowed my children to have a tool and a resource to be able to talk about these issues. And so it's been a very exciting process, something that I never imagined that I would do, but that I did kind of out of a combination of necessity. And then we were also at home during the pandemic, and I had some time where I could do some creative things and try some things that I hadn't done before.
Yeah, this pandemic has been disguised blessings for a lot of people because it pushed us to be creative, and it's kind of like going back into that screen time, right? What are we going to do? And it means so much to hear this. And what would you say? Was there a certain age range that we suggest for the listeners for that, or is it kind of good for what age are you thinking?
Yeah, it's really good for anywhere from ages 4 to 12.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
and it's definitely a book that is important to read with children.
Mm,
There's images and stuff that folks could, probably be willing to talk about. I'll pull some of them up here,
sure.
but show you a little bit of the. So there's these sorts of images of protest, and
Okay.
you can see the children here out in the
Yeah.
protest, and once they start to look at the pictures, they see the signs, and so there's opportunities to talk about the different signs. And here's some pictures of people crying,
Crying.
right? And
Yeah.
so it's a
Mm.
writing about why people cry, why it's a painful experience, and why protest can be such a painful experience for a lot of people. And these sorts of images are in the book, but it really is an opportunity for people to you know sit down with a book and just talk to their children of all different ages. And one of the things that's been really cool about it is that when people read it, they oftentimes tell me about the conversations that come from it and the questions that their children have. And I think one of the things that I wanted to be mindful of when I was writing the book is that I didn't want to provide answers as much as I wanted to provide the kinds of opportunities for children and their parents to have conversations so that they can wrestle with the correct answers over an extended period of time. There's no answer that's going to come from reading it one time. It's really a conversation starter rather than something to end the conversation.
Love that. And so, and I'm gonna tell you right now, is it available for purchase in locations or anywhere like that?
Yeah, it's available at magicalblacktears.com at a one-stop shop.
Love it.
Uh, we
Love it.
we were gonna do it on Amazon and all that, but we were like, let's keep these black dollars in black hands. So
I
we
love
sell
it.
everything direct. So magicalblacktears.com is the place to get it. It's in select local bookstores, but the place to purchase is at the magicalblacktears.com website.
Got it. So I'm gonna tell you right up front, right now, you'll be expecting an order that's coming this way. So because I love
Thank you.
things like that that push the boundary, because I'm always looking for ways to express and just kind of like show my son. And one of the things that I feel, and then I'm gonna get into just a second into parenting education. But one of the things I really, really work hard to do is to not put my pre put my biases onto my son. My wife and I work really hard on doing that, and I'm gonna show you a small example. So we're in the process of moving from Las Vegas to South Carolina, and I just started thinking about my childhood, how I grew up, and I was telling my son, I was like, "Listen, you better get ready, because the kids down there are a little different. So they're
Hmm.
going to tease you different. They're going to come at you different. So it's time to get some thick skin on you." And I'm just like, that was my experience. It might be different.
Mm.
But now I'm pushing him
Hmm.
to thinking before we even get there. And I caught myself and I'm like, whoa. Yep, those are the things that we said we work to change. And we're not perfect, so but at least we're
Right.
cognizant of it. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of need to, rework that. It might be different now, but no, we don't play the
Right.
dozens anymore. Yo, mamas. So
Right.
they
Right.
can't do that
Right. Right.
nowadays.
Absolutely.
So let's get into parenting now. We now kind of just like that, right? Parenting, some different things that parents can do to help with their education, to push their kids, direct them in anything. What kind of thoughts you can, to kind of guide or give to parents out there? Because kids are so malleable at different ages. What do you think?
Yeah. I mentioned some of them already. Is like turn off the screens. There's some other things. Try to managing their diet is really really important. Which part of the gardening piece is really important for our family. My kids are much more into vegetables and have a different kind of palate because of we grow a lot of what we grow a lot of what we eat. Um, and I should say too that we do that in Chicago, right? We don't have a yard, so we have to walk, a block of 2 blocks over to go to our community garden. But we do that and we spend time out there. I think the biggest thing, the biggest lesson that I found and I've learned is that I really try to like involve my children with me with the things that I'm doing. And so, as you mentioned, that representation and children seeing you do magic, young people, children in particular, are like watching. They're right there. They're soaking it all in. And so I really try to just make sure that they understand what I'm doing, and I try to involve them in things. So, for example, as I was talking about the book, there's some books that I write, like the academic books. Stuck Improving is right over here behind me. That's an academic book that I wrote. But when I was working on Magical Black Tears, like I involved them through the process. From the storyline and asking their feedback, ask their feedback and opinions on the images in the book. What's scary? Is anything scary? How do you feel about this? And so, really, just helping them understand what it means to actually even put a book together. And that's been really powerful because now they feel like I my dad wrote a book and I can write books too. And so they sketch out and write books and that sort of thing. And so I think one of the important things that parents can do is to not assume that young people will benefit only from what they're told to do, but that they benefit tremendously from going alongside their parents, seeing what parents do. And so that's everything. That's small things like giving yourself more time to go to the grocery store, right? Instead of like, I'm gonna run in, I'm gonna get these things, and I'm gonna get out. Going to the grocery store in a way that allows your children, especially young children, to participate. I remember one time, my daughter was asking me, she wanted the the uh the soup with frozen on it, right? And then there was another soup that was just the store soup, and it didn't have frozen on it, and the prices were different. And I was able to talk to her about the differences in the prices. Like one of them is they're marketing it to you as a child. And then we would talk about the candy up at the front when you're checking out. Why is the candy there? Why is it down at the level where children are at? And all that kind of stuff. And I was like, there's a reason for that. And so it was an opportunity for me to talk to her a lot about like marketing and advertising and promotions and what consumption means and how people want you to consume. They don't want you to become a producer, they want you to become a consumer. And so now, she's 10 years old and she gets all of that stuff. She's just like, wow, look at how these people are trying to market this to me. Now, that don't mean she don't want it, but at least she has the awareness of what's going on and how people are using a label or the height of something in that store to determine to try to shape and determine her taste for something. When you can get the noodles that are the exact same that are just O's and X's, that's 60 cents less than the one with the frozen label on it. So I think a lot of what I would encourage parents to do is to slow down and give children the time to really ask their questions and give yourself the time and the grace to be able to answer the questions too. It actually ends up being really fun to try to explain some of these basic kind of taking for granted things that adults already know and think about, and trying to explain those to, a 4, 5, 6, 7 year old, and then being able to see the fruits of those conversations and explorations when they get 10, 11, and 12. It's really, really a fun process that I've been able to see play out. And that's something I encourage parents to do. It's just slow down, do your everyday life things, but do them in a slower way where children can actually take the time to ask questions and you can have ample time to actually respond.
Yeah, it is such a rewarding, heartfelt thing, especially coming from the parents' end. Because I'm sitting here and again, we're hitting on so many things, and I'm like, yes, we work to do things like that because we decided to be the change. And money, relationship with money, for an example, toxic relationship. Oh my goodness, I see my parents, my uncles, everybody just spend money without thinking the future. So I decided, no, I'm going to stop it now and work to teach my son. And so my wife and I, we also are primarily in the real estate industry. And so we would ask him when, because I was doing flipping, it's like, oh, we got to knock this wall down, do this to the house. We're going to, get extra square footage, whatever. And so we asked him, say, hey, can you draw us a room of where you would want your room at in the house? And so he would draw it. And I started to learn that we would go into a home or something and he'd be like, Dad, I would knock this wall down. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
exactly.
why is that?
Right.
Right. Or then I started teaching him about money because he's that I could, and instead of just going into the whole thing, do you think money grow on trees?
Right.
I think East Coast, West Coast, everyone's heard that coming from a black culture or something. Do you think money grows on trees? But instead of saying that to him, we got him just like little toy store ATM machine, and it has a card, and so he would put money in there as he earned it, and then he could use the card. We kept the card though, so he could take money out when he wanted to. But
Right.
it would tell him he would go to a store now. You can have whatever you want. You got to use your money. And eventually he started saying, how much is that? And he's like, oh no, I only got like $7. He
Yeah.
started catching on to it then. So he said,
Right.
oh no, I need to save that. Cause I'm like, if you can get it now, but you might see something tomorrow that you really want, and it might be $12. And now you got
Right.
$5 less. So instead of just punching him in the face, not literally, listeners, don't go calling someone. I'm talking about with
Right.
information. Like, money don't grow on trees, boy. we slowed down and we
Yeah.
taught him this is
Yeah.
the importance of it. Man, this is like fire. Dakota,
Yeah,
this is
it's a yeah, it's a slow down process. I mean, I'm thinking, but some of it is just like being mindful of like when to go to the grocery store, right? If
yeah,
you go during that peak time, they it moves at an adult pace, right? It moves at a pace for the people who know and who have done this hundreds of times. And so, even when we go to like, a mall or something, I might go at a time that's off because like you're gonna pay for everything. And you got your wallet and you got to take it out your wallet. And even the act of like putting something in and out of a wallet for a child take a little while. But if it ain't no line behind us or it's only one or two people, it's all good.
yeah,
And the people at the counter are just gonna have to wait, and he's literally counting each dollar. I want I want my son and children to be able to take the time to do that. It
yeah,
gives them a different level of confidence and an understanding of like what's happening. And then I also give them the opportunity to get the little social graces along with it. You say thank you. Where do you put your receipt? Why is it important to have a receipt? Right?
mm,
And then I talk to my children about it too. Like as a black child, why is it really important to make sure you got your receipt with you? If
yeah,
they ask you, do you want a receipt? You always accept the receipt. And so those sorts of things take the foresight to make sure that you don't have enough time for the child to be able to do that.
yeah,
The interaction that would take us 2 minutes might take 6 minutes for them to actually get through. But they need to have the opportunity to get through it with some guidance and with the parent being there, to take the money out of the wallet and it's a trip because they'll see. I don't know how my children they'll do if they got $20 and then they got like a bunch of ones. They'll count out all the ones before they get to people to 20. You know what I'm saying? So I just be like, it's all good. You choose the approach that's gonna work for you. And
yeah.
if it says $17 and they got 17, they're gonna count out $17. They're not gonna get a 20. And
Because
then
you
we
get
might,
the 20,
so
you're
I
gonna
think
spend
those are
it.
the kind of things that they get to do. But
Yeah.
that's where the learning happens. The learning happens from them having the opportunity to do it.
Love it. Oh man, this is so it's like I love this because we have to change that education. We have to slow it down, like you said, take some time to show them and let them learn. Guide them, they're gonna make mistakes. Hey, make that mistake. If you break that 20, you're gonna spend more money quicker or something. But
Hmm.
I absolutely love this. And for all of the listeners out there, it was mentioned earlier, magicalblacktears.com, correct? I think that's it.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So I like to say this because sometimes people don't, they may not know that even if you, let's say, if you're not able to get the book, you can still support by sharing that information. You could go to that website and then post it onto your social media or whatever for someone else who may be able to use it, even if you can't directly purchase it. But go purchase it, support black businesses, keep the money in house. Let's help each other grow, even to the point of maybe, and I don't know anything about this because it wouldn't work here in the desert. The community garden, I'm telling you, we can try, but it won't work. We don't got no dirt.
Mm. Right.
If they got some vegetables that can
Right.
grow in sand, then we could talk. But so, but research, maybe how you can start a community garden in your city. Talk to
Yeah.
your city council or whatever the procedures are. But try something different. Like all this information is being provided. Don't wait for someone to say, why don't we start a garden? How about you be the one to start to change? Or even if you
Yeah.
can't directly do it, maybe get a little group up and put a flyer up in your neighborhood. Is anyone interested in starting a garden? And maybe five people, write message. Oh, I love this. I love this. So, is there anything you think we've missed? Any last words you may want to share with the listeners? Please take the floor, and then I'm gonna come back and ask you my one question.
Uh, no, I don't have anything. I just really appreciate the opportunity to just connect and talk. This is first podcast I did in 2023, and it's been a great one. So just really excited and really appreciative of the opportunity.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate this. And what's crazy is, and my listeners know the story, but for those who are just listening for the first time, my wife and I started podcasting directly in the pandemic. Right, we were
Mm,
so bored, we whatever, because the housing market, we couldn't sell homes and do all that stuff then.
mm,
But we grabbed a mic and we just said, let's talk. And it was so therapeutic for us. We started talking about how we were doing things in our relationship to help us bond during that time frame, right? And
Right.
that we got a lot of great things. And then she started doing a women's empowerment podcast, and I was like, you know what, I just want to talk. And so I started doing this podcast, and so this has been really great, and I appreciate that, and you being on and bringing us knowledge. And so um, I want to ask you a question, just my one question. Take a moment and think about this, but what do you feel you want to be remembered by for your legacy? What do you feel you want to leave to anyone that's important in your world?
Wow, what a great question. Huh. I think I want to be remembered as a person who um, created ways for other people to be able to thrive too, right? So one of the things that I'm really big on, which you probably may have picked up on in my remarks, is that I'm really big on, capacity, right? So making sure that like I'm not the only person in the room who knows how to do A, B, and C. For me, success is not that people know how to do A, B, and C, um, but that people can like actually do A, B, and C as a result of being in community in relationship with me, and so that translates into I want my children to know how to do the things that I know how to do. If I have students in my classes at UIC and there's things that I know how to do or things that they know how to do, I believe it's important that we're intentional about making sure that people beyond ourselves have the capacity to do the things that we know how to do, whether that's play guitar. I know how to play guitar. I taught myself how to play guitar, and so whenever I can show people anything, I show them, and that's how I've benefited. There's a gentleman who attends a church up the street from me, and one time he saw me with my guitar. He didn't know I played guitar. He was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know you played." And he sat down. And I'm telling you, the 30 minutes that he took with me completely transformed my playing. Like maybe 30 minutes, and this was like on a sidewalk. Let me show you these little things right here. This right here might help you. And it was just completely transformational. So I think about the small interactions in life like I had with this particular gentleman. And I would like to be remembered for as that kind of person that people met me, come into contact with me, and as a result of coming into contact with me and having a relationship with me, whether it's for 30 minutes or whether 30 years, there's something that you were able to take away from that, made you be able to do things better in your life. And then one of the things that I always ask people is I'm a big pass it forward person. So I don't want anything in return. The gift is for you to take whatever it is that you learn from me and or whatever I've done and then pass that forward to someone else so that it kind of keeps living. So I think that that's what I would want to be recognized and remembered for as a person who was willing to share what it is I know and what I can do so that other people can do the same things and more.
Love it, love it, love it. And that's why I said one day I was like, I just want to, because my wife kept asking me sometimes, like, well, your podcast is called Just One Question, but you don't have a one question. I was like, I don't know. And that's like, I want to get a thought provoking thing that makes us think. And I love that just to be able to say, like you said, to someone to pass it on and share the knowledge. And, you know, you teach them and then they teach someone else. And then that, oh, I love it. I love it. So thank you very much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get these bills paid with my sponsors here. But I want you
Sounds
to hang
good.
out for just 1 second because I'm gonna come back
Okay.
and wrap things up and tell you some of the other stuff. So hang tight for me for 1 second, Dakota. I appreciate that. Also, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go check out the website magicalblacktears.com. Purchase the book. Go there, share it, get the information out. We have to help build each other up. We've been saying it for years instead of tearing each other down. That's what we're all about. And I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you for listening. Because without you all being here, I would probably just be talking to myself. And what my wife says is, I probably still would like that. I don't know. She says, I just love to talk. So definitely thank you all for being here. And thank you to the Minority Report for being a sponsor to this. Everyone, please check out the Minority Report. It's a social gathering group for podcasters, networkers, people who want to learn about podcasting or want to be a guest. And also, thank you to our sponsor for Hustle 1977. For those who hustle and grind, you deserve to relax. So why not relax with a glass of smooth tasting brand whiskey? And for myself, ladies and gentlemen, as I always tell you, do me a favor and live while you are alive.
Thank you for listening to Just One Question. I know you enjoyed the show because you made it this far. If you want to hear more, subscribe, share, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Now, what's your one question?